I always say moms and women in general are super women. If you want a job done well, a mom will get it done without question. 10 over 10. So the thing that comes to mind is one of my one of my early clients when I had first launched enBloom back in its like infancy phase had asked me, "Oh, like since you're a mom now, how can I expect you to do a good job with this?" And I was absolutely floored by the gall that someone would even ask that question. And it really got me so annoyed that I didn't react. And then I said, why is that question appropriate? I said, "Would you be asking a dad this question?" And then the person kind of like backstepped and like realized how inappropriate the question was. But I ultimately never answered the question because I was like, your question's incredibly out of line. And if I were a working dad, if that was even a thing, you wouldn't dare ask me the question about how I would be handling and balancing my workload and my family load at home.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Mompreneurs Making Moves. I'm your host, Amraya Murdoch. And if you're looking for calm, ease, and flow as an entrepreneur, then Infinite Exec, my main company, is for you, where we give you your own wing woman and your dedicated assistant who can help you with your core tasks all the way up to your project management and just leaving you at the end of the day breathing like, yeah. So if that's you, definitely need to connect and talk. But besides that, if you've ever tried to answer emails with a toddler pulling at your sleeve, or you've wondered how to grow your business while chasing after your dreams and probably your kids, you're in the right place. Because every week we'll get real about wins, messes, and all the magical moments in between. So we'll share practical tips, honest stories, and the laughs that keep us going. And we'll go ahead and get started. Again, welcome back to another episode of Mompreneurs Making Moves. And today we have the amazing Leila. She's the founder of enBloom Marketing, a brand strategy and storytelling agency with over 13 years of experience. And she's led national campaigns for, plethora of brands. And she also is, after being laid off 3 times in 7 years, she took a bold step and she launched her marketing agency. And so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about postpartum. We're talking about how stress affects entrepreneurs, how to navigate as a mom, and why do we do it? Why is it still possible? That's what Mompreneurs is all about. So how are you today?
I'm great. Hi there. Thanks for having me.
No, of course. I mean, I remember seeing you on LinkedIn and I was just so impressed. And I was like, wow, this girl is making moves. So first, tell us a little bit like fun fact about you so we can connect with you as a person. And then the we'll dive in.
Yes, let's dive into it. The funnest fact about me is my lucky number is 7, not because I like to gamble or anything like that, but I was born on the 7th month, the 7th day at 7:07 a.m. and I was 7 pounds and 7 ounces. So if that's not a lucky 7 combo, then I don't know what is.
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible. I was born on the 7th of my month. So that's cool, but nothing like what you just described. So that is so interesting. Okay. So let's just dive in. First, I want to know, talk to us about when you were building enBloom and you were postpartum. Go ahead and paint the picture for us. Walk us through that.
Yes. So I'll start with the early days. So I was building something shortly after becoming a mom. I think part of motherhood is or at least I got reinvigorated in a way. Even though I was struggling with postpartum depression, I also had these big, beautiful brown eyes staring back at me. And it gave me a lot of different purpose, I would say, renewed purpose and fulfillment in a lot of different ways, but I didn't know what that meant tangibly. A big part of that, while I was working for an HR tech brand in the software space, I got promoted to director level, and then they invested in a specific professional development program. And in the program, it was the CMO of Coke or Pepsi. I can't remember which one exactly, but it was a female CMO, a chief marketing officer. And she specifically said, if you've reached director level or above and you're not consulting, you really need to take a look in the mirror. And she proceeded to go through 2 or 3 slides about like, here's what your minimum should charge. Here's how to do it. Here's where to find clients. Here's how to approach them and what to ask. And for me, I kind of took that as a sign of, holy cow, maybe I don't believe in myself and how much like I've actually done. And maybe I should give this a try. So that was January of 22. And I remember this was after a completely unmedicated home birth. I was on prescription medicine for postpartum depression and kind of felt a way about it. And I was looking for this thing. Like I knew I wanted to start a business. I had tied it to my daughter's first birthday in June. And I said, I don't know what this is going to be. I don't know if it's going to be an agency, a consultancy, if I'm going to consult. I just don't know. But there's like a feeling and a fire and a burning passion that I'm just going to do it by her birthday. And I chose her birthday because like most moms, if it's tied to my child, I'm more likely to do it and do it really, really well. Not that I won't do things for myself, but sometimes they get farther and further down the list, unfortunately, which I think we're all working on. But ultimately, between January and April, I started kind of getting some freelance work. I started getting small consulting clients. And then by May, I decided on the brand name enBloom. And from there, developed a logo that is not the logo that it is today, but a very hodgepodge logo and colors that were slightly off. But I was like, hey, I met my deadline. I'm going to announce to like a few close friends June 1st. I was 8 days before my deadline, so check the box. And here's what I'm offering. Here's to who. And my goal is to get 3 clients in 30 days. 3 clients in 90 days. And I launched. I basically just shared on Instagram. I didn't even share on LinkedIn because I was too nervous, because it felt too formal and official. I remember even talking to my boss at the time and I just said, hey, I'm going to launch this. It has nothing to do with work. And they were like, green light, have at it. You have full reign. As long as nothing conflicts with current work projects or anything like that, you're fine. And so with that kind of like boost of confidence from my employer, I said, holy cow, let's do it. So I launched and my goal was to get 3 clients in 90 days and I got 3 clients in 30 days. And then I was like, holy cow, here we go. So ultimately, just got the ball rolling while I was still working full time. And I managed that client load for about a year before I ultimately got laid off from that job and
Wow.
launched.
Wow. That is so interesting. So I had my baby 7 months ago at home on medicated birth. So that's a whole other level of giving birth. So I understand that. I can say at least I do understand. And I think too, it's interesting. What resonates with me is that entrepreneurial spirit. I feel like to a point, you either have it or you don't, because when you get going and things get rough, like if you don't have it, you're just gonna bow out, it, like you're gonna figure it out and you're gonna stick in, even if you don't feel like sticking in, even if you felt like you're gonna quit yesterday, you're still gonna show up the next day. So there's a part that I feel like can't be taught when you're looking at being an entrepreneur. But since having my child, I opened up a couple more businesses. And so I understand that resonates with me, like trying to make sure, okay, can we provide for our family? Can we have a good quality of life? And just fire and like moving and being motivated, all that. So, yeah, that definitely resonates. So, really quick, talk to me about the stigma that moms are divided, and then even mom brain, pregnancy brain, like almost like we're weaker, and yet we're still showing up for work, and we're probably the hardest work is out there. Some of the hardest work is out there. Like, talk to me about how you combat that when you have your own business. As the owner that you are and as the expert that you are, how do you still show up as a mompreneur and say, yeah, no, I'm a mom, but I'm on it. And no, no one's perfect, but we are some of the best workers out there. How do you show up like that?
Yeah. I always say moms and women in general are super women. If you want a job done well, a mom will get it done without question. 10 over 10. So the thing that comes to mind is one of my early clients when I had first launched enBloom back in its like infancy phase had asked me, "Oh, like since you're a mom now, how can I expect you to do a good job with this?" And I was absolutely floored by the gall that someone would even ask that question. And it really got me so annoyed that I didn't react. I kind of just like paused and took a minute and then I said, "Why is that question appropriate?"
Hmm.
I said, "Would you be asking a dad this question?" And then the person kind of like backstepped and like realized how inappropriate the question was. But I ultimately never answered the question because I was like, your question's incredibly out of line. And if I were a working dad, if that was even a thing, you wouldn't dare ask me the question about how I would be handling and balancing my workload and my family load at home. So I think part of owning the business is being able to stand on my values in that way and say, hey, this isn't going to be a fit because we clearly have different values and views, but it's also educating. So I went back to that person. I said, hey, I'm a mom now. And like, despite what you may think, I have more passion, more excitement, more energy, hypothetically some days, but more energy for bringing this to life and doing the best job because I want to leave a legacy for my daughter. Like, it's not just about me anymore. It's not just about me and my husband. There's so much more depth and purpose to what I'm doing behind the scenes that for you, this might just look like a project. And for me, there's actual depth and impact here. So, regardless of my status with motherhood, none of that matters. But I just need you to know for future, one, that question is incredibly inappropriate. And two, the way you're thinking about this is completely wrong because I have more passion now and more desire to make an impact and do things correctly than I've ever had in my life since I wasn't a mom. So I
No, I
think part of
love
it is really standing on your values and letting people know what you will and won't put up with, but also understanding your own value of, hey, this is what I bring to the table. Who cares if I'm a mom, a widow, a divorcee? None of that is relevant to our employment conversation in this work.
Yeah, wow. I love that. I love the education piece. A lot of people just get offended and then it's like, "Ugh," but you made it a point to turn around and educate. And then you also, I loved your approach at the question that you asked. Is that an appropriate question? And what does that have to do with our working relationship? I think that's very, very wise. That's awesome. Speaking of what did you mention that I wanted to tackle? So, well, this is more of a personal note. I want to take a quick detour. One thing that I've been dealing with is imposter syndrome, right? So you're a mom now, you're doing the thing, you're grinding, you have your business, you have your team, you have your this, you're that. And then sometimes you do drop the ball because no one's perfect. And then the imposter starts to like talk to you and say, huh, you're not as good as you say you are. You're probably overcharging them because you're not as good as you say you are. Mm. Now that you're a mom, you're even more scattered, you're even more divided. Like, what are you doing? You should just go home. You should just be home. Like, stop working, stop what you're doing. The jig is up. They're going to find out. You can't keep up with everything. What would you say to me and other moms who are dealing with that?
So I had a business coach named Lori Rudiman who spoke a lot to me about imposter syndrome after my third layoff. My first layoff, I had just purchased my own house solo here in the Midwest and was like, what am I going to do? My second and third, it gets like slightly easier, but each time you get laid off, it's kind of like a ding to your self-confidence in a lot of ways. So I invested a lot in therapy to kind of work through that. And what most helped me was she kind of positioned it as imposter syndrome is a coat. You can decide to take the coat off. You can decide to wear the coat, but ultimately it is a condition, a societal condition that is trying to hold women, specifically women of color, specifically Black women, Latinas, more so than ever, hold women back into thinking that they're less than and not understanding fully their value. So the visualization of like literally taking the coat off, she said you can decide not to wear it. And that's the approach I take. I have what I call a rock star folder on all of my devices, on my laptops, on my phone, of screenshots, of emails, of proof of when I've done a great job and gotten unsolicited feedback, when someone said, hey, I really appreciated that. And I go to those rock star folders is what I call them for whatever reason. And you can call them whatever you want. But I go to those rock star folders when I'm having some of those moments of doubt to say, oh man, I'm walking into this room. I'm the only woman. I'm the only Latina. I'm the only woman of color. What are people going to think, say? What is the perception of me? And those rock star folders to me is like my bread and butter to say, no, girl, you've done this before. Like, you got this. Stop doubting yourself. And here's the factual proof that you can do this again and again. So for me, that is my approach to it. It's a societal condition and it's a way of thinking. And I choose not to think that way.
Wow, absolutely love that. Love that. I'm going to need to create my folder here right after this. Thanks. Okay, so one thing that I want to know is why did you do an at-home unmedicated birth? I think that's something that we don't get the chance to speak about often. So since there's a fellow, I don't even know I'd call you, but yeah, fellow mom who did the same thing. Like, why did you choose that?
Yeah, fellow home birthing mama. I love it. This is such a rare conversation. It's so special. I ultimately had a home birth because I saw my sister had a home birth. When I was looking back in my family history, my family's from Puerto Rico. My grandmother had a home birth for 8 kids. So her home birth was different. She couldn't get to a hospital. She didn't have the choice of insurance, of things and privileges that we often take for granted here. I chose to have a home birth because I saw that it was possible. My sister had a VBAC, which is a vaginal birth after a cesarean section with my niece in 2020, literally the day before the world shut down with the pandemic. And I was there by her side for the entire birth. I saw every single thing. I saw when my niece got stuck with her arms like this. I saw the midwife working her magic because they are angels. I saw the doula working their magic because they're angels. And I just thought the process was incredibly beautiful and sacred. And then once I got pregnant and married, or married and pregnant, I started doing research around Black women in the United States, around maternal health rates, around Latinas in the United States, and all of the details of what happens to women, specifically Black and Latina women in hospital settings, as they're not listened to and their voices are silenced, and things often progress in ways that aren't on their birth plan. So I didn't want to be a part of that. And I wanted to keep things as sacred as possible. I mean, women have been getting pregnant for decades and decades and generations. And for some reason, we think that that needs to be a medical situation, where sometimes it is. It's a huge privilege to have that home birth. You have to be very diligent with the prep and the nutrition heading up to and leading up to the labor months. But ultimately, I decided, because I was inspired by my sister and saw that it was possible, and I felt powerful. I felt like I can do this and I have no other choice.
Wow, yeah, I love that. And would you say that it went according to how you expected it? Was it harder than you expected? Do you remember the pain? Talk to me about that.
It's so funny because everyone's like, "Do you remember the pain? Like, you're so strong." And I'm like, "I didn't feel very strong. Like, I just didn't have a choice," right? I don't remember the pain, if I'm being honest. I remember that it was the hardest thing I've ever done. I remember that I thought I was going to die. I remember that I felt like I was going to die. And I remember saying to everyone, in fact, screaming, that this is the end and I'm going to die. Ultimately, you get to transition, and that's what's normal, because your body is pumping so many different hormones and your baby's coming down that birth canal and your pelvic floor is opening, and all of the beautiful things that happen naturally to a woman's body that we often take for granted. So I don't really remember the pain, if I'm being honest, but I know it was incredibly hard.
Yeah, yeah. Would you do it again?
Yes. Yes, I would do it again. And in fact, I am here soon in the spring.
Congratulations.
Thank
Okay,
you.
speaking of which, let's talk about fertility and entrepreneurship and stress and levels. What has your experience been with being a mompreneur and still continuing to have kids?
The beauty of entrepreneurship is that, like, everything's a constant juxtaposition. So I always say, like, this business has brought me to life in so many ways, pulled me out of that postpartum depression, off of those meds, and I've been able to see color and see clearly again, in my process of building the business. But there's also another side where it's like the pressure of building the business, the pressure of always needing to be on, of always needing to network, to talk to people, to build relationship, to do all of the things on the list. That pressure and that stress has definitely had an impact on my body, my health, my stress levels, my fertility, my heart rate, all the things that you can think about. And it's had an opposite stress on, I mean, frankly, my husband and I tried for like 8 months to try to get pregnant. And while my business was growing and everyone's like, "Hey, Leila, you're doing a great job. Like, you're doing the damn thing. You're thriving." From a numbers perspective, I was. Like, my revenue was growing. I was getting more recurring clients. I was getting more PR, more awards. And all of that on paper looked really good. But ultimately, when I came home, my goal of, "Hey, I just want to have a second baby," kept like lingering in my head and putting more weight on my shoulders. So I think I haven't quite figured it out in terms of like what I don't believe in balance. I just believe in sacrifice, that you can't have it all. And I have focused on prioritizing the things that I know will move the needle as it relates to my health and my family's health, and what we need to do to obviously pay our bills and some. But it's a really hard position to be in, to be successful in one area of your life and really hold the weight and the desire and the hope every single month of, "Oh, man, not again, not again. I got to try again. Now we got to start the process again." There's so many emotions behind visualizing and manifesting your life with this new baby, but also hoping that you'll get there and dealing with the disappointment and the roller coaster along the way. It's an interesting journey. I always say I've been creating while trying to create. And ultimately, we've been successful, but the balance has not been without, or the journey, I should say, has not been without struggle or hardships, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. No, and you know what's interesting is it doesn't matter what you do. There's always going to be some type of compromise or sacrifice. For example, if you decide to be a stay-at-home mom and not work at all, which I definitely couldn't see for you or for me, but if you pretend, let's pretend that we did. If we chose that life, then we would no longer have our own money or income helping the family, right? We no longer have certain connections or relationships that we're fostering. And in some ways, it would kind of have us completely shift how we do everything, right? And yeah, we'd have more time for the kids and home things, but we wouldn't be able to do other things that maybe we were even created to do through the avenues of business and relationships. And so you can't have it all in that aspect. But at the same time, like you're talking about, here we are on the other side. We're entrepreneurs, we're successful, we're connecting, we have recurring clients. But, our personal life, trying to figure out how to prioritize in different moments is constant journey. And there's no perfect or right way to do it. It's just learning what works for you and your family. And also just, having faith that the right things will happen at the right time and that it's all going to work out and it's going to be okay, even if it doesn't look exactly like someone else's story or what people say should happen. So yeah, no, I think that's really, really helpful. Or either way, there's different things that we all have to choose to prioritize.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. One thing I want to know is, do you ever deal with mom guilt while you're working and you're like, man, I know I could be spending time right now, but I've really got to get this done. And I've really got to connect with this person. I've got to have this call and I've got to go to this event. And and then your kid is just right there, just looking at you, or they're thinking of you, they want you. Like, how do you deal with mom guilt? What's your top tip for that?
I will say I deal with it less now. Now that my daughter's 3, gonna be 4 in the spring, I feel like I feel it less now because I know how to justify my time to myself at least. I am the type of person where I have to, like, mentally give myself permission. I'm like, "No, you deserve this. My daughter deserves a mom that's fully working, fully present right now. When I'm playing with her, fully present," right? But, of course, there's days where, I drop her at daycare and I'm like, "Man, I wish I could just spend the day with her." Or I'm working and I'm like, "I gotta go pick her. I wanna go pick her up early," and vice versa. So there's definitely moments, and I think what I focus on in those moments is that I'm doing this for her ultimately, that, the business goes beyond just me and the business is a legacy for her. What am I ultimately moving towards? I think part of it too is I've shifted because I've been through so much trial and tribulations in terms of like the layoffs and the fertility challenges and all the things, postpartum depression and mental health, and having to really focus on myself as an entity outside of the business. It's realized now how much I was living out of fear and out of scarcity. So I've shifted in a lot of ways to more abundant mindsets, to understanding myself more, and to having people around me that also believe in abundance, because the world is scary, right? There's a lot of fear based things happening in the world. And I choose abundance in a way that is backed by faith. And that to me is the most powerful piece of, hey, if you're feeling mom guilt or if you feel XYZ, imposter syndrome, whatever the thing is that you're feeling, knowing and having faith in your own journey and what that looks like.
No, yeah, that is beautiful. I love that. Absolutely love that. And I know for me personally, coming from humble living, I mean, I would say I was pretty well off. I mean, like I wasn't struggling. I wasn't out on the streets, but I wasn't like living in a mansion either. I think the scarcity mindset really comes into play, especially as an entrepreneur. And unless you get that, like you're talking about having the group around you to help elevate your mindset, and even just in mentorship and business and beyond, like unless you have that level up, then those other mindsets, the old things are going to try to compete with where you are, which I think is something we don't really talk about because we're like, we're doing what we can. It's fine. Yeah, I came from humble beginnings and I'm here. But I mean, really, like if we're being real, that is probably one of the most important things that you talk about actually, and that we talk about on the podcast, which is you've got to surround yourself with where you want to go. People who have been there, who are going there with you, who are growing and ready to stretch and change for the best of themselves and their business and their family. Yeah, that is absolutely critical. So one thing I have to mention is you were, named, the IBJ Tech 25 in 2022. You're recognized as Indiana Female Owned Business of the Year by the Indiana Latino Expo in 2024. You were honored. I mean, you have all of these accolades and awards. So I guess my question is, how do you see yourself when you're getting these things? Like, do you, take pride in it? Like, I am that. Yeah. I am that person. Or do you, remain humble and you're just like, oh, glory to God? Like, how do you feel about these things when these successes start happening? How do you process that for yourself?
It's a great question. I grew up very humble with like Catholic roots and Catholic beginnings, and I've had to work very hard through, again, therapy to move away from being overly humble. Because I think in a lot of ways, the good girl syndrome, the stay humble, be quiet, be seen, not heard, holds women back in a lot of different ways. And I think that gender conditioning specifically is detrimental to women. And so I've moved away from being humble, but I think if you would have asked me this maybe 4 years ago, I would be like, "Oh, yeah, like, it doesn't mean anything." But now I do take ownership of it. I've worked really hard to be here, and ultimately all of the awards and accolades I win based on my successes are a tribute to my parents and how hard they've worked to raise myself and my siblings. And I use it as that, as fuel and as a mirror. I constantly am taking picture. Like, my dad was here this past week and I was like, "Hey, take this award home. Like, this isn't mine, this is for you," because I don't need the accolades, but I think it's helpful for them to see that all of the years of sacrifice and private school and education and driving all of my siblings to various activities and XYZ, and the stress you feel as a parent has finally somehow paid off. So for me, I find purpose in it, but it's more so purpose for my family and for my parents and everything that they've done for me.
No, I love that. I love that because really it's all about honoring ourselves and honoring the people who've helped us. Yeah, that's perfect. Love that. Well, thank you so much. I really could keep talking. Like, I feel like we're just getting started. So we might have to have you back if you're open to it.
Let's do it.
But yes, thank you so much for your time. And then for those who are hanging out with us today on Mompreneurs Making Moves, if you found a little encouragement, a fresh idea, or just felt seen, please share with your mompreneur friends. And remember that every small step you take in your business and in your life matters. And you are absolutely not alone on this journey. So keep making moves, keep showing up, and remember to take care of yourself too. And make sure to follow us at Mompreneurs Making Moves on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. And you can watch the full interview on our YouTube channel at Mompreneurs Making Moves Official. Thank you again so much for being on the show with us. And I look forward to the next time we have you back. Yes, thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Go Mamas.